enter these gorges, it looks different, it smells different, it sounds different, and you just really notice the change of pace. Everything kind of slows down, and at first that gives you a feeling of eeriness, but as you get used to that feeling and that change of pace, it really makes you feel peaceful. That's reflected in some of the animals that live here as well. They also have a slower pace, and their lives are completely separated from anything outside of this little narrow forest belt.
Table Mountain is this massive wild space in the middle of a gigantic city. Over millions of years, the sea level has risen and fallen back down again. And when the sea level rises, Table Mountain is an island. And if it stays as an island for a long time, the plants and animals become isolated. And when that happens, they become different species. And that really is what happened here with some of the amphibians.
So amphibians globally are the most threatened vertebrates on the planet. In South Africa, 30% of our 135 species are listed as threatened. Many of them are very highly habitat specific and occur in very narrow ranges, often on mountain tops or in a couple of streams like the Table Mountain ghost frog.
The Table Mountain ghost frog is restricted to Table Mountain. It doesn't occur anywhere else in the world.
They live in these dark ravines, kloofs, and they got these spindly long legs with suckers on the tips of their fingers and toes when they sort of adapted to creeping into rock crevices.
They're nocturnal, so their huge eyes are obviously key to see at night. In terms of numbers, we have no idea how many there are. There has been past monitoring efforts to try and get an idea of how many tadpoles there are, but that's an incredibly challenging task. The majority of adults that we find, we don't disturb at all. And then if they are accessible, try and get a shot of their back to hopefully in the future ID that specific individual. And through that we could understand how long they live for, what areas they use, how far they move around.
The site where we're at is called the Orange Kloof. It's a historical river health program monitoring site. And what this program does is collect information on all the biological aspects of rivers. For example, the freshwater macroinvertebrates and also the riparian vegetation. What Scientific Services does is we provide assistance to park management in terms of research and monitoring. And through doing research and monitoring, we try to manage our natural biodiversity.
There's a fish from the galaxid family, which is endemic to the Western Cape. Also a very ancient family of fish that have been living here for an extremely long period of time. There's also the Cape River frog, which is the typical frog that you see jumping into a stream wherever you go. And then there's a whole host of aquatic macroinvertebrates, which are mostly the larval stages of flying insects.
Like the amulets, they have little suctions at the bottom of their bums and they sit and they filter out things that are in the current. You get your predators, like your dragonfly larvae. A cased caddisfly is one of the invertebrates that use the material around it to make a little home, a little shell for itself. The Glossostomatidae, they use little sand grains. The Pisciulates, they use twigs, leaves, pieces of leaf. It's a protection method because you get natural fish, you get other invertebrates that are predators, and that's how they protect themselves.
A lot of the invertebrates that live in the stream are detritivores, and they consume organic matter and convert it into a tissue that can be accessed by animals higher up the food chain. And most of these invertebrates then change into mayflies, dragonflies, damselflies, and are then predated on by birds and frogs and other insects. And it's obviously incredibly crucial for the system.
An interesting thing about ghost frogs is that the tadpoles live a very long time, a couple years even, and that's why they need these perennial streams. The stream needs to be flowing all the time. If the stream flow ceases, the tadpoles will die before they can actually turn into frogs. So the tadpole is a very sensitive life stage, and we need to be very aware that stream quality but also the stream flow is important to them. Otherwise we will lose the tadpoles, and if we do, we lose the adults.
There's a huge seasonal change, and that winter flush is really crucial in shaping the system, especially in shaping ghost frog habitat, which requires flushing of any sediment buildup amongst the boulders and cobbles. So any changes to either the broader climate system or to more localized flow that might prevent that flush would have negative consequences to ghost frog tadpoles and to the stream ecosystem as a whole.
For this particular site, it's impacted by the dams on top of the mountain, and it's impacting on the natural flows of the river. And sometimes in summer, all the water is taken up by the dam, so there's no flow in the system.
Some of these streams are choked with invasive species, and they have completely changed the ecology of the streams.
There's erosion under the alien trees, then you get more sedimentation in your streams.
Ghost frog tadpoles disappear from these heavily impacted areas. Instead of being a deep sediment-free pool or a strongly flowing riffle, it becomes a stagnant pool or a channel that has no depth and is just full of roots and sediment.
And that stops the tadpoles from foraging naturally. So these tadpoles are grazers, and they have sucker mouths, and that means they stick onto rocks and they graze the algae that's on the rocks. And if the rocks are covered by sediment, they will die out because they won't have any food. They can't suck their mouth parts onto the rocks.
It's laughable to think that your steps would have an impact to this vast mountain, but thousands of people are walking and running on these paths every year. That does have an impact, and the accumulated impact of each visit becomes significant. Through learning about what the species needs and where it occurs, we've really got a better idea of the threats that are impacting the species. And we can start getting ideas about which threats are the most important, which are the most severe, and how we can address them. Working on fire have been really amazing in their eagerness to jump to the core of removing the invasive vegetation from these streams.
Manually cutting them and applying herbicides. When restoring, we want to see whether the management actions that you're actually applying, whether that is working or not.
We're going to need to monitor those actions to make sure that the frogs are bouncing back and the streams are bouncing back. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
It's been absolutely amazing to see areas of the stream that were choked with invasive plants cleared out and become much lighter and more natural. But that's only the first phase. They will need continuous maintenance and a careful eye to keep those areas in check. It has to be a collaborative effort, and it's really key that all the stakeholders involved work together and communicate together to find solutions.
The success of the projects is due to those strong partnerships and everybody playing to their strengths and playing their role.
Really, the ultimate goal of this whole project is to not just improve the quality of the streams for themselves, but improve it for the animals that are in them, and we can then relook at the ghost frog and ask, okay, are we doing better, and is it less endangered than it was before?
In protecting it and making people aware that we have this critically endangered frog species in our national park. That's important.
The importance is what they represent in the system as an ambassador to drive change and to drive conservation.